Hello, everybody. This is Gilgamesh, and today we are looking at a great verse in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. And it reads, Hanephalim heyu ba'eretz bayamim hahem, v'gam achreichen asher yavo'u b'nei ha'elohim al banot ha'adam, v'yaldu lahem hema hagiborim asher ma'olam anashe Hashem. Let's take it apart. Roughly translated, it is the fallen ones, they were in the land in those days, and also afterward, which they came, the sons of the Elohim. So the sons of the Elohim came to the daughters of the Adam, and they bore to them. They were the warriors, which were from long ago. Men of the name. Okay, so take a word by word here. Well, first let me note that this is an interesting verse to show the contrast between Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia and Biblia Hebraica Quinta, BHS and BHQ. This that you're looking at right now is the BHS, and you'll notice that it has only one footnote for this verse, which is right over here, footnote A. And we see here that footnote A tells us that in the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is what these three little curlicues mean, there is an extra yod in this word right here, which changes it to a he feel. That changes the meaning of this substantially and changes what the obvious subject of the verse is. We'll talk about the footnotes towards the end, but I just wanted to bring that up, and we will circle back to that bit of information later. We'll start here, though, with translating this word by word. The nephilim, you look at it here, it's not a very common word. It comes from the root nafal, which means to fall. And so there's some fun things in the lexicon here. This is halot, this is lexicon. And you'll see that it is sometimes spelled with a yod in the middle of the word and sometimes without. In this case, we have it without here. It means a giant in Middle Hebrew, and in Jewish Aramaic, it means a giant, a monster, or a deformed baby. In Middle Hebrew, the plural plus bin means a salamander. Okay. Jewish Aramaic, the plural can mean Orion, the constellation of the sky. That's a recurring theme. A lot of things mean Orion, but considering him a giant, that makes sense since it's this big thing in the sky. In Middle Hebrew, the Hephil and Jewish Aramaic means to abort. Giants were arising from miscarriages or hurled down from heaven. We have here that also means those who have fallen heroically in a battle. It also means the giant-like early inhabitants of Palestine, and you see them referenced in Numbers 13. This is an important concept here that we get a lot of this, the idea that the early inhabitants of Palestine were gigantic in proportions, and they were called the Nephilim. Okay, and yes, they are linked to the Anakim, which is another word for giants. So that is what we have here. These are with a mythical origin here in Genesis 6:4, which is what we're looking at here. And the Septuagint translates them as gigantes, meaning giants. So these are the giants, the fallen ones, the giants. They were in the land. So this is our to be verb here. It is a third common plural. And yeah, so they were in the Eretz. We have our bet preposition here, meaning in, and aretz here is land. So ba'aretz, bayamim hahim. Literally, this is saying in the days, these. This is how you say in those days in Hebrew. You use a pronoun here, a third masculine plural pronoun for those days. The reason it's a third masculine plural is because the noun that it's modifying here is a masculine plural. This is a definite here because we have the patach under the bet. So this is in the yamim, which is an irregular plural of the word yom. So in the days, hahim, the them, meaning those days, in those days. Then we have our conjunction here, vagam, and also. So we've established the giants were in the land in those days, and also acharei kin. Acharei means after. Kin means thus. These two words are often put together as sort of an idiomatic phrase meaning afterwards. So afterwards, asher yavo'u, which they came. So we have here a third masculine plural call verb here of vo. It's a hollow verb. The vav is not present here in the middle, but the root letters are bet, vav, aleph. After they came, and then here is our subject, and this is the normal word order in Hebrew, is to put the verb first and then the subject afterwards. B'nai ha-Elohim, the sons of the Elohim. So who are the sons of the Elohim? This is a phrase we see used a few times. It indicates some type of a divine being, maybe a divine council that was co-present with God in the heavens. These sons of the Elohim were often thought of as angels, but we see them a few times showing up in the Hebrew Bible. They are some type of divine beings that live in the heavens with the Elohim. So these sons of the Elohim came, to banot, daughters of Adam, the mankind. So the daughters of mankind. So these sons of God came to these daughters, these human daughters, v'yaldu, and they bore, meaning they had children, lahem, to them. So they had children, they bore children to them. Now, this verb right here in the call, which is what it shows up as here, this is a third common plural. And because it's common plural, it could mean men or women. They bore, when it is in the call here, means to bear children. And so obviously that would be women. But if you put it in the he feel, then it becomes a causative. They caused to bear. And we generally translate that to beget, to make someone pregnant, to cause them to bear. And so then the subject is no longer the daughters of Adam, but the sons of the Elohim. If we're going by the Samaritan Pentateuch, the subject of this verb is the sons of the Elohim. If we're going by the Masoretic text, it is the daughters of Adam. And so it changes the actor in this verse. And they bore to them. They, and yes, we do have the pronoun twice here. This lahem ends in the third masculine plural pronoun, him. And then here we have hema, which is the third masculine plural pronoun as an independent pronoun. So yeah, we have them twice in a row here. And the only way to really translate that to make sense is, and they bore to them, comma, they, insert a linking verb here, are hagiborim, the warriors, the great ones, the mighty ones. Hagiborim, asher, which me'olam, from eternity. Now, in later Hebrew, this word olam means world. It does not mean that in biblical. So if you know later Hebrew, let go of that. This has an idea of time here. And so from eternity, meaning from the beginning, from old time, from long ago. So they are the Giborim, the mighty ones, the warriors, which were from the beginning, from long ago. Anashe Hashem, men of the name. Now, Hashem is a word that has in later tradition come to be a name of God and is used respectfully instead of the tetragrammaton, Hashem. Do not associate that with this. This is well before that tradition started. So this is not related to that. These are saying the men of the name. We interpret this to mean men that were famous, whose names were to be remembered. That is one possibility. It is possible, though, that this means something else. Men of the name, perhaps these are men who had access to the divine name, which was always associated with great power, in which case Hashem would mean something similar to what it comes to mean later. But yes, these are men of the name, these great warriors. And so if we look then at BHQ and what it might add to this discussion, I'll flip over to that. We see it here, same way. Notice the little circle above Hanifilim. It goes over here to this entry here. Actually, the small circle tells us that there is a Masora Parva note on that, which tells us that it goes to here. And we have this very cryptic bit of letters with a lot of abbreviations. And fortunately, BHQ spells out for us exactly what it means. You'll see this is the exact same thing as what's above there. And it tells us here that this is linked to the word Hanifilim. And it tells us that it occurs 3 times. That's what the gimel means. Twice defective. That's what the bet, twice. And then this het samak here indicates defective spelling, twice defective with the yod missing, and then once plene, meaning that it has the yod. So that's what this last two words here is, that this is once plene. So that's what is in this cryptic Masoretic note here, is they're just simply counting it so that they know that they have inscribed this properly, that this word shows up 3 times, twice without the first yod and once with the first yod. We also have another Masoretic note down here with El Banot, to the daughters of. And we see here, to the daughters of, they have a Masoretic note here that is bet. And so it says here, there are 3, not 2 occurrences of this word, this lemma. So basically they're saying here they got it wrong. The Masoretes put down bet, meaning that this phrase occurs twice, but it actually occurs 3 times, and it gives us all 3 references. This happens a lot. As I have mentioned before, they were doing this without computers. It's amazing how they did this at all. But yes, sometimes they have it wrong. So they're saying this occurs twice, it actually occurs 3 times. We then have a final marker down here for Anashe Hashem, men of the name, and that corresponds to this note here, which does not have a commentary on it, but the lamed with the dot above it means that it is a singular occurrence. This phrase only occurs here. We don't see it anywhere else. And that's interesting. So Anashe Hashem is unique to this particular verse. So that's the first thing we get with BHQ, is we get the Masorah Parva. Now, none of these were terribly fascinating. Most of them just have to do with counting words. But then we come to here where it has 6-4, and it has Hanephilim here, which corresponds to this. Now, instead of the footnotes that we have in the BHS, where we have the letters put into the text, here it just references the full word. So Hanephilim, it tells us that it is this way in Aquila, which is one of the versions of the Septuagint, and in Symmachus, which is another version of the Septuagint, and in T upper superscript ON, which is the Targum Onkelos, one of the Targums, which is an Aramaic translation. And it also has in parentheses here T superscript J, which is the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, also known as the Targum Jerusalem. All of those sources agree with this reading. Then we have this little pipe here, which separates witnesses and their various readings. And here we have a different reading. Here we've added a conjunction on the beginning, which I can't seem to highlight, a conjunction on the beginning, and we've also added the extra yod here in the word Nephilim. And it tells us that this is this way in the Samaritan Pentateuch. We add a conjunction, and it is found in the Samaritan Pentateuch, but it also tells us that it is in some of the Septuagint as well. And it gives us a little theta here for Theodotion. And it's also this way in the Vulgate and in the Syriac. And it tells us here with this little dagger at the end that there is more about this in the end commentary. And that's what's over here in this third window. Here is the end commentary for 6.4, and it has Hanephilim. And so this is what it tells us here. It tells us that the Septuagint and the Vulgate render Nephilim as giants, in line with its meaning in note numbers 1333, where they are depicted as huge creatures. It is noteworthy that the same gigantes is used for the rendering of Giborim and Raphaim. Raphaim is one that we've spoken of recently in a verse from Isaiah that we looked at. It is another word for giants, as is Anakim and as is Nephilim. The translations of Symmachus, the Syriac, and the Targum do not differ, basically, although they do not necessarily imply enormity. So these other witnesses also agree in basics here, although only the Greek really indicates that they are giants. Aquila, one of the Septuagints, alone refers to etymology following a midrash that plays on the root nafal. They let the world fall by immorality and fell. Confer Genesis Rabbah 26:7. That is the Midrash of Genesis Rabbah, and there it explains that these fallen ones were immoral and therefore they fell, and that's where the name Nephilim comes from. And then we have here a new sentence here: the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Septuagint, the Vulgate, Theodotion, and the Syriac explicitly connect the passage with the previous verse. And they're referring to the fact that they added the conjunction to it here, meaning that this is a continuation of the previous thought here, a connection that is only implicit in the Masoretic text and the other sources. And they mentioned that David Himke, a famous commentator on the Torah, also commented on this. This is probably intended to emphasize the connection between these creatures and the immoral deeds previously narrated and condemned in verse 3. The appearance of the giants is the result of the intercourse of the sons of God with human females. This is in accordance with the aversion towards them as expressed in the Jewish Midrash. And then it gives you some additional reading on that if you want to learn more about the traditions around these Nephilim. So a lot more explanation here, spelling out what some of the differences are, giving you good references where you can go to for more information. The BHQ really is doing a great job on this, but it doesn't end there. We've got more notes on this. So this dot here indicates that that is the end of a case. And so now we start something new. We have B'nai Ha-Elohim, sons of the Elohim. And we have here that we actually, it says the arrow here points to the reader's direction to, and then it has the dagger here, basically is saying, look in the back for a detailed explanation of this. And so if we scroll down over here, okay, for that one, actually, I think that it was just the second part here that they were connected to the sons of God who had intercourse with human females. I think that's what this note is saying here. And then that's the end of that case. And then we go to Yaldu, and it tells us that the Septuagint, the Vulgate, the Syriac, and the Targum all agree with that reading. But this other reading here is the Samaritan Pentateuch. And this tells us here that there is a case on it in the end of the book. And this is what this is. Using the causative he feel, the Samaritan Pentateuch makes the fathers the subject of the action, while for the Masoretic text, followed by the Syriac and the Targum, the subject is the mothers. Therefore, they use the call. The difference between the call conjugation, meaning to bear children, and the he feel conjugation, meaning to beget, is not rigorously observed in the Masoretic texts. We have cases where they use the conjugations a little more loosely, and it gives us here the example of Genesis 4:18 as one of those. One may infer from this irregularity that the fathers are considered the subject in the Masoretic text as well, which would justify the angel's speech in 1 Enoch, who says, and beget us from them children in 1 Enoch 6:2. So there are other traditions as well suggesting that the focus of this verse is the fathers of the children, these sons of the Elohim, rather than the mothers of the children, the daughters of the Adam. So we have here then this very nice commentary giving us a lot of background on this, along with a lot of other directions we could take to research this verse further. So coming back here to our main thought here, we have here the fallen ones. They were in the land in those days. And also afterwards, the sons of the Elohim came to the daughters of mankind, and they begat to themselves. They are the warriors, the giant ones, which were from old time, men of the name. Fascinating bit of mythology, very interesting verse. There has been 1,000 stories that have sprung off this verse, but there you have it. And we will leave it there until next time. If you like this, please like and subscribe. And please do join us on Discord, where we have lots more discussions like this. Thank you very much. Goodbye.